Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. So today I am filming for you my May wrap up, but before I get into that I'm just going to give a little very brief channel / life update. So I've just come back from a really lovely weekend away in France, and one thing that I did over my weekend away, which I haven't done for a while, was write some poetry, and it made me realise how much I miss writing poetry or writing in general. One of the things that I intended to do when I started this channel was to get back into blogging more often, and I haven't really done that, and that's partly because of how much time filming and editing the videos takes up each week. So I've decided for the time being I am going to reduce back down to one video a week so that I can also post on my blog once a week. I'm going to see how that goes until I sort of get into the flow of writing again a bit more, and then I might be able to increase the video posting again, I don't know. But I don't want to sacrifice writing for the sake of making the videos anymore, so I'm going to try and do both because I really enjoy this. I enjoy making videos and talking about books, and I'm enjoying having conversations with people and getting to know people through BookTube, but I also miss writing and want to spend some time focusing on that, and I only have a finite number of hours in the day. I only have a limited amount of free time, so I want to make sure I am investing in both hobbies. The second thing I just want to mention very quickly before I get into the books is that next month, July, will be my 1 year anniversary on BookTube, which is quite exciting. There may be a few extra videos next month, a couple of bonus ones if I can fit them in, and you never know, I may do a little giveaway, but I would really love by then if we can get me to 200 subscribers. I would really appreciate that, so spread the word. Right, without further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in May. I read 7 books in May, which isn't bad. It's about average for me. 3 books were from my own TBR, which is actually pretty good, and then 4 books were ones I borrowed from the library, so I had quite a library heavy month last month, but that's fine. One of the books was non-fiction, and for the challenges that I'm doing across the year, 2 books counted towards my indie challenge. 1 book was from my list of the oldest books on my Goodreads TBR, and I also completed a series, which is always fun. I gave 1 book 3 stars, 4 books 4 stars, and 2 books 5 stars, so again it was a fairly successful reading month. I mostly really enjoyed the books that I was reading, so I'm just going to get into them really. And I always talk about the books in order from lowest rated to highest rated. It also just so happens that this month that is also the order that I read them in, coincidentally, so my reading just got a bit better and better really. So the first book that I finished in the month of May was a book that I gave 3 stars to, and this was Lars Orchestra Saves the World by Alexander McCall Smith. So this book is about a lady named Lavender who is widowed just sort of before the start of the Second World War in slightly strange circumstances, and she moves to a small Suffolk village to try and get over her loss, and ends up setting up an orchestra for the village and for the staff on a local airbase. I've realised something about Alexander McCall Smith after reading this book, because I really love his Scotland Street series. It's one of my favourite series. I just find those books really engaging and delightful, and I really enjoy the Number One Ladies Detective Agency series. He has a couple of other series, and there was one that I can't remember what the name of the series is. The first one is something like the Sunday Philosophy Club, I can't remember. Anyway, so I read the first book in another of his series and I didn't like it, and I've now read, I'd say, at least 3 or maybe 4 of his standalones, and I haven't liked them either. So I think in future I'm going to try and just stick to the books of his that I know I will enjoy, namely those 2 series that I mentioned that I really enjoy. I think I've got a book from another series that I haven't tried yet on the shelf, so I'll probably give that one a go and we'll see how that goes, but I don't think I'm going to read any more of his standalones because, I mean, it was alright. I thought it was going to be more about the orchestra, seeing as that's the title, but I don't know, the orchestra didn't really get much mention at all that I could see. So it was alright, I just didn't love it. Gave it 3 stars. But if you like sort of gentle war-based historical fiction, you know, you might enjoy it. If you like slice of village life type novels, you might enjoy it. So, and if you like his writing style, you might enjoy it. It's just some of his books I love and some of them I can take or leave apparently. So that was the the only book I gave 3 stars to this month. Lars Orchestra was one of the oldest books on my TBR, so I'm really glad to have got that off the TBR. So next I read 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. This is the next one in the Miss Marple series. I can't remember what number I have got up to. I can't remember what number, I think this might be number 7. I don't really remember. I really enjoyed this one. I thought the premise of it was really clever. Basically, a friend of Miss Marple's is travelling on a train to visit Miss Marple, and she falls asleep on the train, and when she wakes up, she's looking out the window of the train as another train is coming alongside, and she sees a man strangling a woman in the other train, and she tries to tell the train guard, but he doesn't believe her, and so she goes to Miss Marple, and Miss Marple's knowing her character, believes her and helps to try and figure out what happened. So I thought it was a really great premise. I did enjoy the characters in it, and I thought it was a very clever concept. I quite enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. Continuing to really enjoy this read through of the Miss Marple novels. On which note, I actually also did read The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, which was the next one in the series, which I think is number 8 in the series, but I'm not definitely sure. I read that in one of my omnibus editions. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that one too. Maybe not quite as much. According to Mara from Books Like Woe, who is hosting this Marple read-along, we're reaching the stage in Agatha Christie's career where she's starting to not quite execute the story so well. I'm not as familiar with the Christie canon as Mara is, but I understand where she's coming from, because this was the first one where I pretty much figured the whole plot out. I figured out who had been married to who before and who the intended victim really was meant to be, and I felt very clever about it, but at the same time that made it slightly disappointing. Part of what I love about Agatha Christie is that the clues are there, but they're very difficult to piece together. I don't find it satisfying if I figure out the whole of the plot. So I really did enjoy The Mirror Cracked as well. I thought the concept of that one was quite clever as well. It features one of my favourite characters from the Marple series, which is Dolly Bantry, who's one of Miss Marple's friends. So I liked that she was back in it. I don't really have a lot more to say. I gave that one 4 stars as well, but that was more like a 3.5 stars. Maybe when I get to the end of the series, I'll do a little chart that ranks the order of enjoyment of them. That was one of the ones that I hadn't enjoyed quite as much. I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as 450 from Paddington, I would say. So the next 3 books were all ones that I borrowed from the library, so I don't have them here. So the next book that I gave 4 stars to was Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the final book in the original Grisha trilogy, so I'm counting that as a complete series, even though the Grishaverse has other books in it, which I am going to be reading, or, well, you'll hear more about that later. So, Ruin and Rising, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, which is the same as I gave the first one, Shadow and Bone. And when I looked back, I'd actually given Siege and Storm 5 stars, so something about Siege and Storm appealed to me more than the others. I think it was the introduction of some of the new characters, like Nikolai was a really great character. Yeah, I found this a mostly really good end to the trilogy. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the plot because it is the final book in the trilogy, and I don't want to give away spoilers for the earlier book. I think most people on BookTube are fairly familiar with this series now. If not, I really do recommend them, and you can see the progression in Leigh Bardugo's writing as she moves through these books and onto the next one she wrote. I will just say that I did find parts of the ending a little bit convenient. If you want to know what I mean, then maybe send me a message on Twitter, because I don't want to put spoilers in the comments anywhere in case that people haven't read it yet. But yeah, there were bits about the ending that I was just like, oh well, without wishing to give too many spoilers, if you're worried about spoilers, just mute for a moment. But if you're gonna kill someone, actually kill them. Don't pretend to kill them and then not kill them. If you've read the book, you'll know what I mean. Okay, spoilers over. So I thought, but other than that convenient aspect to the ending, I did find it quite a good ending to the trilogy. I liked some of the ways the story developed, and really keen to keep reading more of her books. as you will find out. So the next book that I gave 4 stars to was called The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslye Walton. This was sort of magical realism type novel, sort of historical magical realism. So it's about a girl called Ava Lavender who was born with wings like a bird, and she is tracing her family history, so she recounts the story of from her great grandparents through to her story, her own story, their sort of relationships and their attitudes towards love and loss. And I thought it was really, really beautifully written. I thought it was really clever the way the story developed. I really liked the character of Ava's twin brother Henry, although it's not mentioned on the page. From the way the character is described, I would say that Henry is supposed to be on the autistic spectrum, and I thought the way it was handled was really sensitively done. I'm saying this as someone who works with people on the autistic spectrum, but I'm not on the spectrum myself, so maybe someone who is would disagree with that, but I thought it was handled very sensitively, and I thought his character was really beautifully written. He was one of my favourite characters in the book. I will give a content warning for this book. There is sexual violence in there and actually some other quite brutal things that happen to various members of Ava's family, but the way it's written you kind of almost don't realise how brutal they are until you think back on it, which is, I suppose, credit to Leslye Walton's writing, at least as far as I'm concerned anyway. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one actually. I thought it was really, really beautiful and sad and lovely. Strange and beautiful, as the title suggests. So yeah, I do really recommend that one if you haven't come across it. I think it was quite big a few years ago, I don't know, but I picked it up from the library, and that one counted towards my indie challenge because it was published by Walker Books, who are an independent publisher specialising in children and young adult fiction. And so I ticked off the following categories on my bingo card, which was kids or YA, author from another country, and a press over 20 years old. So that was pretty good. My hay fever was really bad when I was away camping near a woodland, so there was lots of pollen there, so that's why I sound a bit snuffly, so apologies for that. The final book that I gave 4 stars to was called The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This was non-fiction. It is what we know about the lives of the women who were victims of Jack the Ripper. It was really well researched and really well presented, and gave a really interesting insight into a side of Victorian London that we don't necessarily talk about very often. The dangers faced by single poor women in that era, in that area. I don't know a lot about Jack the Ripper. I'm not really into true crime or that type of book usually, but I follow Hallie Rubenhold on Twitter, and she's received a lot of flack from people who claim to be experts on Jack the Ripper, who have discounted her work without reading it, and whenever that happens it makes me really interested in actually reading the book. She's been mansplained to a lot. I thought her writing was brilliant. I thought she researched really well, and one of the things that she talks about is how even at the time, from the time that they were killed, it was assumed that the reason why these women were on the street at night was because they were prostitutes. She spends quite a lot of time explaining why that probably wasn't the case in most of these women's lives. There was one of the victims probably was, and another one may have been at a former time in her life, but probably wasn't at that time, at the time of her death. And then the other 3 just happened to be homeless women that lived on the street when they couldn't afford to stay in a lodging house. She's making the point that the women were misunderstood at the time and have continued to be misunderstood in the century or so afterwards. And I couldn't help thinking that if the women had been understood properly at the time, if they hadn't been sort of essentially dismissed as prostitutes, then maybe they wouldn't have struggled so hard to find the perpetrator. Just saying. Not an expert by any means myself, as I've mentioned. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that book. It was quite grim. It was very sad. I don't know what else I was expecting really, because it was about women who were murdered, but I really highly recommend it if you're interested in the Victorian era, if you're interested in true crime. I think it's a very well researched and well written book. That was all my 4-star reads, and finally on to my 5-star reads. The The first of these is going to be a slightly familiar author, because the first book that I gave 5 stars to this month was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. So this represents a very rare event that I read 2 books by the same author within a month. It rarely happens. But basically I'd enjoyed the Grisha trilogy so much that I had requested Six of Crows from the library while I was still reading Ruin and Rising. I wasn't going to read this one right away, but then I was talking to Megan from Tome Infinity. I'll link her channel down below, and we had previously talked about potentially buddy reading this at some point if our timelines coincided, and it just so happened that the week that I picked it up from the library was the week that she was planning to read it, so I went into reading it straight away. So we did buddy read it and had a bit of a chat about it as we were going along, and I just really loved it, even more than the original Grisha trilogy. I really liked the cast of characters in this book. I thought they were really interesting and more rounded characters than we saw in the original Grisha trilogy. I also liked the setting of Ketterdam and the Ice Court. I liked the heist aspect, because I always find that quite an interesting story trope. Is it a trope? I don't know. Anyway, and I liked that there was more about the wider setting of the Grishaverse than just Ravka. So I really loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I think it totally deserves the hype that it has received. I would suggest reading the Grisha trilogy before you read this, just because it gives more context. So the Grisha themselves are not quite so central characters in this as they are in the original Grisha trilogy, so it doesn't go into explaining as much about sort of their powers and how the magic system works in this. It assumes that you've read the other books, so you have that knowledge, which I think is why some people who try and read this first maybe struggle with it a bit more. I really enjoyed it, and I have Crooked Kingdom waiting for me at the library. I need to go and pick it up this week when I drop this one off, and so I'll be trying to read that. Hopefully I'll be trying to read that in June or the very beginning of July, and I'm really excited to see what happens next in the story. And then I'll be nearly up to date. I'll just have the latest book out, which is King of Scars, which goes back to one of my favourite characters of Nikolai. So looking forward to carrying on with this series in the very near future. And then the final book that I read in the month of May, and the final book I gave 5 stars to, was Gemina by Amie, Kaufman and Kristoff. This is the second book in the Illuminae Files series. This is another really popular series on BookTube, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the plot again, because I don't want to give spoilers for Illuminae, but this picks up roughly where Illuminae left off, but in a different setting. So this focuses on a space station called Heimdall, which controls a wormhole that links different parts of the galaxy together. The corporation that were responsible for the events in Illuminae are basically trying to cover up what happened in Illuminae by attacking the space station. I think I can say that without giving away too many spoilers. So this follows some different characters to Illuminae. So this follows Hannah and Nick, who are trying to essentially save the space station from the evil corporation. Again, it's told in mixed media format, which I really love. I just think it's so creative how these books are put together. It's something that I really enjoy about them. So, I mean, I gave this 5 stars. It probably would be a 4.5 star, but I just have such respect for the series and how it's put together that I rounded it up. I think they're so cleverly put together. So I do really recommend this series. I've just got one more to go, which is Obsidio, which I'm hopefully going to pick up in the next couple of months and finish this series off, and that is it. That's all the books I read in May. So usually at this point I would go into a TBR because I don't usually film them separately, but this month is the Currently Reading-a-thon hosted by Sarah from Novel Serendipity, so I'm going to do a separate TBR for that to talk about all the books that are on my currently reading shelf on Goodreads that I'm going to try and get through in the month of June. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, for sticking with my hay fever addled brain and slightly jet lagged is not the right word. We came back on an overnight ferry and I did not sleep well, so I'm a bit tired. So thank you for putting up with me today, and don't forget what I said about it being a month to my BookTube anniversary. So if you could help me get myself to my goal of 200 subscribers by the end of the month, I'd be really grateful, like so grateful. Yeah, it means a lot to me that people want to hear what I have to say about books, so I really appreciate people that take time to watch and to comment and to engage with me on BookTube and also on Book Twitter. So you can do all those things. Please comment, let me know what you think about any of these books, and contact me on Twitter as well or on Goodreads, so that information's always listed in the description. And go check out my blog if you fancy, which hopefully will have been updated maybe by the time I upload this. We will see. That's it for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!